we should be live soon. Just want to get some confirmation on it. Okay, I think yes, we are. We are live. Good evening. Hello, everybody. My name is Kristen. I am one of the owners of Itinerant Literate Books here in Charleston. We're thrilled that you all could join us for what promises to be a fun and fascinating conversation. And we're especially honored to be launching Laurie's new book, A Better Bad Idea. And joining me tonight, of course. Yay! Okay, you got my books over there.
Yeah, I'll hold it. Yeah.
Thank you.
I put mine.
Thank you.
Perfect.
So yes, as you see, joining me tonight are Laurie Devore and Courtney Summers. So I'm going to do a few little introductions and tell you all a little bit about the books, and then we're going to jump right into the questions and everything. Okay, so author of Winner Take All and How to Break a Boy, and of course, A Better Bad Idea.
I was pointing and I'm pointing backwards.
Oh. Yes. It's like a new dance.
Of books.
So anyways, Laurie was actually born here in South Carolina, and we're very excited to be able to claim her as a local author now. She moved back to the Charleston area. So thank you for doing that so we could have you be ours. Oh, we have some tech. Okay, good. Sorry, we had a little bit of feedback on our end, but I think we're fixed. Okay, so that's Laurie with the fabulous dance moves. And then Courtney is the author of 9 books, including the Edgar Award-winning Sadie, and most recently The Project. She is joining us from Canada, very far away. I think you're not the farthest author we've had. Amy Kaufman joined us from.
Oh, she's Australia.
Yeah. She's from Australia or New Zealand. I think it's Australia or New Zealand.
Yeah.
Australia.
I think it's Australia.
Yes. So you two will have to fight next time you meet for the honor of being
so lovely. I absolutely could not fight her.
She really is. So yes. So now to talk about The Project and A Better Bad Idea, I want to preface this with it was really hard to try and give a synopsis / introduction to either of these books without giving away just all of the meaty, delicious bits that you get all the way through. So I wanted to start with just talking about kind of what we find in common with these books to begin with. So both books follow very headstrong women who are attempting to navigate the fallout of events that some of which are within their control and some of which are outside of their control. Sometimes you don't always know which category it falls into, what they're actually working on. And both you experience that through these characters, both in the present day of the novel and in the past of the novel. It makes so much sense if you read them. I know that was very convoluted. But so to set this up, in A Better Bad Idea, we meet Evelyn, who has fled her small southern town after doing something she can't take back. And she's fled with a boy named Ashton, who he hasn't been the same since his girlfriend Reed died. Was found dead. Very specifically different than just died. These are different things. And then we also get Reed's perspective in the past. So just because she's dead doesn't mean we don't really know what was going on or what her perspective was, I should really say. Yeah. Similarly, in The Project, we're also alternating between two young women, 19-year-old Lo, who is on a dogged pursuit of this, what she is certain is a cult, and her sister who joined it. She wants to know what this is, why her sister joined it, and she wants to take the cult down. And then you also get her sister's perspective, and and how she came to be in it, and also why she became so obsessed with its enigmatic leader. So that's our basis. If you haven't read either book, these are the worlds that we're working in. So just to start off, I would love to know what was kind of the origin story of both of these books, and I'd like to start with you, Laurie. I've read that some songs by Martina McBride play a big role in the books, and in particular, is it Gunpowder? Gunpowder.
Yeah. Miranda Lambert.
I'm sorry.
Gunpowder. Yeah. No, you're fine. Yeah, no. Yeah, each of the acts in the book is named after a Miranda Lambert song. But yeah, I had the idea. I heard her song "Gunpowder and Lead," which it's pretty similar to the story of the book. As it's about a girl who basically decides to take a revenge on this abusive adult in her life. And I've kind of referenced in some of my other interviews too. There's a lot of tie-in with country music to the book, and I think there's such a strong history in country music of these kind of revenge fantasy songs. So Martina McBride is a great one. Independence Day, I've referenced that one a lot. And then, I think Carrie Underwood has one. Taylor Swift just came out with one. The Chicks Goodbye Earl is probably the biggest one that people know. So I thought that was fascinating. I just kind of wanted to take that song that's really important for female country artists and women in the South and make that into a book and see how it played out in real life. So yeah, it all kind of stemmed from there of what does that mean and how does that happen and what's the fallout from something like that, because it's always in the moment, it's awesome, and they get their revenge, but is that awesome? So I thought that was kind of the question the whole story idea was playing with.
Was it always going to be a YA book?
Yeah, I always imagined it as a teenage girl character, and I think for something that's so explosive as kind of what she did, you almost have to be in that age where you just make decisions like that, and you're not always thinking about the consequences of your actions when things feel really dire. I think all my books kind of represent that feeling for teenagers, that everything that happens is the end of the world. So I have to take this drastic measure, and a lot of times that really is not good for the characters in my book, but that's just the way I think when you're that age you're thinking, and that's what's changing you and how you're growing.
That comes through so clearly with just that idea of like everything is so heightened, and what happens when you take those teenage heightened feelings and apply them to things with real world consequences and implications, and really things you can't take back. And even just the way that plays out in the like interrelation, like the relationship dynamics, specifically between Reed and Ashton was, and then of course also Ashton and Evelyn. But it was so interesting to watch that and be like, oh man, I've been that girl. I know that girl. I know that guy. I've been that guy. Without any like weird veneer,
Yeah.
It was really, really refreshing, which is also very much how I felt about Flo and Flo. Why do I keep every single time? I swear to God, I wrote down notes and I was like, Flo, which is there's another book.
It's close.
Yeah, but is it? I should really just in my head be like Gloria, Gloria, Lo. Anyways, okay. Lo was a very similar character, where there was just like a lot of relatability. So I would like to kind of circle back and ask the same question to you, Courtney. And knowing that, so you did a great interview with Rolling Stone about they asked you a lot of the questions that I was going to ask you. So I don't want to get you too bored, but synopsis. So asking you, of course, like, hey, so Courtney, why do you want to write about cults? And exploring what about the cult in particular, like cults in particular interested you. I was interested to know that you think you would be susceptible to joining
yes,
as well. But I thought it was really interesting how that, a lot of people probably would be, and they probably wouldn't want to admit that they would be susceptible to joining a cult. So if you could just talk a little bit more about that, kind of how that was the breeding ground for this book.
I very firmly believe that we all have the possibility within us to sort of be caught at the wrong time in our lives in a very vulnerable moment. And so if someone's coming along and they're offering you something that's better than what you currently have, you're going to be interested in that. Like, I don't believe anyone's above that moment of someone just put supposed cult in the comments, which I enjoyed.
Thank you, Holly. Yes, that is good. Keeping us honest. Thank you.
Yes. So I just really think you have to approach a subject like that empathetically, and you have to admit that you are a vulnerable, real human being. And so I wanted to explore that in books. But like I was just thinking when you were talking about that, I was thinking of a better at bad idea and Laurie's character. And I feel like a lot of the times, Laurie, the girls you write would start the cult. Like, that just feels right to me. Do you agree?
Yeah.
I think I'm right.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I could see it. I could see them starting a cult. I feel like Reed would be a great cult leader.
I think so too. Like, honestly, she's got like the world wrapped around your pinky finger.
I mean, Evelyn was kind of her first follower. Following
absolutely.
the Church of Reed for sure.
That's such a good point. Yeah, I mean, the whole book is, Evelyn kind of gets this idea in her head of modeling herself after Reed, and that'll solve all her problems, and that goes really well.
I do have to say that those moments where Evelyn is like, it's very clear that that's what was going on. I was like, oh, this feels very close. I see you, 16-year-old Kristen, and you're just, I wish I could hug you. I did want to, there was one question that I did want to ask that was also related to that Rolling Stone article, though, Courtney, which I think is a similar question I want to ask you, Laurie. When you were writing, your editor, or when you pitched the book, your editor had this almost quippy thing about that, well, don't write a book about cults because we all know how that ends, and having to basically write around that inevitability. Right. And similarly, Laurie, with you, like writing around the inevitability of a runaway story, of an abuse story, like what was it like to kind of circumvent convention, and just if you could talk about that. I'll let you guys duel it out. Who's going to go first?
Rock, paper, scissors.
Do you want to start?
You can go first. Yeah.
I think that's an interesting question, because I kind of think the whole book is a little bit about inevitability, because, from the first sentence is Reed's obituary. So, from right there in the beginning, that Reed's going to die towards the end. And then you kind of have this element of this inevitability of what happens with Evelyn. And I was kind of trying to play around with structure a little bit to get to that by kind of skipping around in time, showing you, before the event that leads to Evelyn setting the fire, and after the event, and going back and forth. And then, I don't know, I just think there's something about the book that feels inevitable about how it's all going to end, because Evelyn's going to come back. You can't just run away from your problems. It's really about embracing the pain that she's had and taking agency over her life. And she thinks she's done that in the beginning, but I think it's kind of, I wanted to do it where she is starting to discover how to take agency over her life after she's decided to be more like Reed, but you're discovering who Reed really was. And so you're really building towards that in terms of knowing that Reed isn't going to make it out of this alive. Reed is dying at the end of the book. And then with Evelyn, it's about, her finally being able to accept who she is and take agency over her own life and get back to, I mean, in some ways she makes the same choices again, but I think she makes them for very different reasons. And that's what's important when you get to that moment of catharsis for Evelyn.
Yeah, I think there's like a lot of power in what you did with that, because I think sometimes there's an expectation when you pick up a book that you don't have to sit with what it's telling you and to make some kind of reckoning with that. Like I feel like a better bad idea is just like a total novel of reckoning, not even just for the characters, but when you're sitting there and reading it, you know that something terrible is going to happen. It's like it's like a car crash in slow motion, and it's really like it's a really good, awesome, like sexy, amazing, angry car crash, but you just know that it's going to be bad and you just have to accept it. And it really puts I feel like it makes the reader do some work. And I think that's really refreshing. I think that a good book does, like that's what I felt like when I was reading A Better Bad Idea. I'm like, she's gonna destroy me. And you did, but it's like, now I have to figure out what I'm going to do with that. And it's like, that's like a lot of trust in the reader. And I think that's important when you're developing a novel that is that kind of bold and daring, that you have to place a lot of trust in the reader. And a lot of readers, sometimes they don't want to take on that responsibility. But the ones that like get it, like that's a profoundly powerful reading experience to offer them.
Well, for one, I want my next book to say really sexy, amazing, angry car crash on the cover.
Take it. Do it.
But no, I think that's a lot though of how the project works too, It's really about that moment when the roles are kind of reversed and Lo has that moment of
stop it. We're just here to slap people in the face, and at the end they're supposed to thank us for it.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
That is, so I am very much a reader who I really hate happy endings. I find them completely unfulfilling. And I was in preparation for tonight. I was reading through a bunch of reviews, and so many reviews for both of your books were like, "It's so good, but it just ruins you. It ruins you." Like, perfect. That's exactly what I want. I want because it's so gritty and it's real and it's, there's just so much reality in the characters that both of y'all portray. And I know, I feel like it almost is an overplayed term to say that these are unrelatable characters, because the truth of it is they're extremely realistic, and they put a mirror up to you as the reader. And you might not like what you see all the time.
Laurie wrote a really good article for the Mary Sue. Did you see it? She wrote it just came out. Laurie, you got to put a link somewhere. Where can we do?
We should try and drop the links in the comments, or we can email the links after the meeting or whatever. Because everybody should read it.
Yeah, she emphasized you had a really good line about you don't have to like them, but you should understand them and see them.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't really know why, but I'm very fascinated by this idea of especially in fiction, likability. And I know Courtney's heard me say this a million times. My favorite show is Succession on HBO, and it's about these really horrible rich people, and it's like soapy drama, but also kind of satirical and mocking them. And I just think it's so brilliant, and I really, really empathize with all of those characters, while at the same time being like, these are like the exact kind of people that I think are terrible in the real world. But I think that's okay, because, I think part of the interesting thing about fiction is exploring things that make you uncomfortable and things that you don't like, and kind of seeing them from that different perspective. And it's hopefully that's not just bad people, it's good people too. And it's seeing things from, the perspective of people from all different backgrounds. But I just think that's fascinating. And I think everyone should have that space to be quote unquote unlikable. And I just feel like it's realistic. There's a lot of us who make a lot of mistakes in our lives, and make a lot of times when we're presented with two choices, we're like, oh, the bad choice looks really good, let's do that. And that's and I mean that's fascinating. A lot of times it's not even, you don't know it's the bad choice, it's the easy choice or the most dramatic choice, and that's why you do it. And I mean, I think that's interesting, and that's what makes me read fiction. Even yesterday I do a book club with the guys over at Itinerant. It's great, called the Get Lit Book Club. Highly recommend if you're in the Charleston area. And we were reading the short story collection, The Secret Lives of Church Women. And I noticed that the story I was most drawn to was different from everyone else, because it was I think it was just like a little bit darker and messier, and I was like, oh, I dug into it. I loved it so much. So
on brand. I'm just picturing Evelyn with like the matches and being like, this is a great idea. Like, just.
Oh, I mean, yeah, that's totally what they're like. This is brilliant. This will solve the problem. It's always like something that seems like it'll solve your problem in that moment, and it's just really, you just made your problem 100 times worse.
Now we have to run far forever.
Sorry, so the joys of trying out new technology. So we are on a new platform tonight. I went full screen so that I could focus on your beautiful faces, and the chat stream past convos went away. So I'm saying this verbally so that Julia knows that if there's to send me questions. So yes, it would still be great if you can keep track. Thank you. Okay, good.
I can see them too. So you haven't.
Okay, don't go full screen because they will go away. As we now know. Okay. Sorry, I did not mean to derail us like that, but I could not think of an elegant way to attempt to convey that information without just texting on my phone. Okay. So, let me look at my questions here. So you've talked a little bit, touched on this just now about the quote unquote relatability and how problematic that term is, but I'm curious how y'all brought those characters. So for Laurie, for Evelyn and Reed in particular, and Courtney for Lo, not Flo, Lo and B in particular. How did they really come onto the page? Because they really defy convention and stereotype. I mean, all the characters in each of your books truly buck convention. They see convention, they kick it out the door. And but the female characters in particular, or I should say the women characters, are truly just so multifaceted. So what was it like? What was the process like writing those people onto the page?
I feel like we must have something in common in the sense that I just think we wholeheartedly embrace them. I don't think we've ever not liked our own characters or just, it's just, there's just a total absolute acceptance of wherever they want to take the story. And I think when you've got Evelyn and you've got Reed and you've got Ashton, even though he doesn't fall into the unlikable female character problems because guys get away with a lot in fiction, but I just think it's an overall acceptance of where they want to go and what they want to do, and not being their mom. Ugh, I don't like that. I wish I hadn't said that.
No, absolutely. And I actually think it's funny. We'll go to the main point of the question, but Ashton's probably my most hated male character so far, which I find really fascinating. Yeah, people are not huge fans of Ashton, which I get on some level, but feel about him how you will. I say that about all my characters.
That's so interesting because the brooding male, protagonist who has a lot of issues is so commonly embraced. But I like Ashton. He's really,
maybe that's a good thing.
Him.
Yeah, I kind of imagine him as a male manic pixie dream girl. So maybe that's
precisely. That's exactly what it is. I have been trying to think about a way to summarize Ashton, and that is exactly it. Oh my god!
Yeah,
because at first I thought Reed was that character, but I was like, no, Reed is not that. That's not.
And that was, I think, what I wanted is, and he's kind of a cipher, and I think that's probably part of why people don't like him. But he tends to take on the whatever you want him to be. He thinks that's who he should be, and that's kind of how he ends up feeling very not great about himself. But yeah, I mean, in terms of Reed and Evelyn, I kind of think there's a weird thing where I have a little bit of a wall between my characters in some ways. Not that I'm not, trying to get in their heads, but I never at the time I'm writing them am really judging them or thinking about, I'm like, oh, this is crazy, I'll have her do this next. I guess it's more, maybe it's not a wall. Maybe it's I'm so into the characters that I'm never thinking about, how are people going to react to this? And I've talked a little bit about this too in promoting this book is I think that's part of what you have to do when you're writing these unlikable female characters is, you can't like sit around wondering what the reaction is going to be while you're writing it, because if you do, you're going to second guess yourself. And I think, you know, with me, there's a real fear. I'm like, okay, I'm doing some things that I know are going to upset people at the time, and I'll just get down in the dumps if I start thinking about what the reaction to it's going to be. So it's just really about staying in the moment when I'm writing.
I do have a quick question, Courtney, or for Laurie. Courtney, before you jump in, for Ashton, was he always part of the narrative, or did he was there from the beginning?
Yeah, so actually, it was always Ashton and Evelyn in there, and Reed was always the dead girlfriend. Like, that all always existed, but when I first started, we didn't have Reed's narration in there, so I probably sent like 50 pages or so to my agent, and we talked about it, and I just felt like something was missing. So I went back and I actually did it with Reed in the first act, which is not how the book ended up being published. We moved all of that, but that was when I think it really clicked and came to life for us of what the book was and how it would work. It needed this understanding of Reed and you know, who she is and why Evelyn wanted to be, and Evelyn wanting to kind of morph into her, and then you finding out. I've always been fascinated with how we kind of like glorify dead people. So especially somebody who died young like Reed did. So I thought that was kind of the fascinating thing to me, was who Reed was and how people talked about her now that she's dead. So I think that's kind of the interesting dichotomy to me.
I think that's a good actually segue to, I think, to get Courtney to answer the same question. If I can add like a small caveat to it. Okay. So Lo almost dies like within the first few pages of the book. This isn't giving anything away. It opens with her family getting in a catastrophic car accident that Beatrice is not in. B is not in, but Lo is in, and it seems it is so formative to her as a character. But you know, there's that ominous like, why didn't I? What if I did? So if you just using that, that is a bridge to talk about your own character development.
I mean, I'm always writing about trauma, so it feels like at this point in my career, I think the project is my 7th book. It's just kind of like putting on a very comfy pair of pajamas. I've just so thoroughly researched trauma responses and people who have survived like horrible things in their lives. Like, this is a very familiar ground for me to cover, but at the same time, I don't feel like I'm retreading the same ground each time. I feel like I'm adding something different to the conversation. When I like develop these characters, it's just like I said at the beginning, I think it's just like this unwavering belief in them, even if they're not believing the right things at the right time in their lives. It's just like I have to follow them wherever they want to go. And I think there's like at one point I was like, a lot of people talk about my narrators being unreliable, and I don't think of it that way because I believe everything they say. And I'm just like, maybe that's how it all happens. I start out believing them, and I just never stop, even when they're making decisions they really shouldn't. And as long as it upsets people, you know, that's my ultimate goal.
Well,
Courtney, did you lose Kristen's audio?
Yes, I did.
It's because I muted myself. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I was trying to open the private chat and be like, I can't hear you.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God, what do I do?
Yeah.
I thought I was muted, and so I unmuted myself, but in fact, I had muted myself. Anyways, you had said, you mentioned that you have researched trauma responses a lot, and I'm really curious about the research that both of y'all did for these books. I would imagine that researching cults is very intensive. And Laurie, I know that you've spoken about your research. So I'm mostly curious about like what is the kernel of research you found that seemed the most impactful to your work? What you lost? What you lost? What? Oh, I know. It's coming back. Okay, sorry. The live actually just caught on that I was gone, and now they're catching up. So this will be funny for everybody in about 30 seconds. So I'm gonna tell them I'm coming back. Oh, coming back. I promise. Again, they will all laugh very much.
There's a question in the chat box that I want Laurie to answer so bad.
Which one? Because I think I know which one.
Can Laurie answer how she writes such good himbos?
I was making eyes at Julia about that in the corner. I was like, how do
I feel like I need to explain, because I'm pretty sure my parents are on this feed, what a himbo is.
Yes, good. We need to be accessible to all.
So a himbo is a bimbo, but a guy. So kind of like a sweet, dumb guy.
That's a great definition.
Like Andy on Parks and Rec, right? He was a himbo, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say so. I'm trying to think of another example.
Well, maybe Tatum in 21 Jump Street.
Okay, Channing Tatum is a great one. I just think him in general in real life, he's a himbo. So good for him, is what I'd say.
Answer the question, Laurie. No.
Okay,
that's true.
It's actually funny. I got called out the other day on another interview I was doing, and they were like, "What's your thing with Golden Boys?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know." I never thought about that before. I didn't know I was doing that, and I am. I think I think part of the reason I like to write like the Golden Boys to kind of contrast them with the girls I write. So it's a little bit of a twist on the bad boy and good girl. I kind of like to do the opposite. I think it's fun and an area that we haven't got to explore maybe as much as some of the others. So I just find those male characters fun, and I like nice guys. So there you go.
And to be fair, I think it's way easier for society to categorize a man as a nice boy or a golden boy than it is to categorize a girl or a woman as a nice woman or a nice girl. So you're more likely to find one of those.
Yeah, and I mean, like winner take all, the guy has a dark side too. So he's kind of charming when you meet him, and then you realize that, part of that is how he gets away with things.
Had this person who was interviewing you, had they read A Better Bed Idea?
Yeah, I think so. I think I think because How to Break a Boy kind of has the golden boy. It actually says it golden boy in I think both of the summaries for those two books.
Fair.
So it's kind of a, but yeah, fallen golden boy, I believe, is how it is. So it's more of a, I think, why are you obsessed with golden boys and or fallen golden boys?
I don't know. Why are you obsessed with good characters?
Yeah. Explain
Gosh.
yourself.
Truly. Okay, so it's 7:30 right now. Let me gently look through my questions first and see if we haven't covered anything that I thought that our readers would want to hear about. Otherwise, we will turn to the questions that we have queued up. We've actually covered quite a lot. Oh wait, Courtney. Wait, no, I think you did answer that about the research. No, we didn't get to that. So because the technical difficulty and then the himbo question obstructed me asking.
Sorry, I was
It's totally fine. It needed to be asked. It was burning on everyone's minds. So I am very curious about the piece of research that didn't make it into the book that may have really informed the book, or just, actually didn't inform the book, which is the most interesting thing that you found during your research, to both of you. Courtney, I know you've spoken more about your research, so I'm not sure who wants to take it first.
I'll just say with cults, when you're researching them, every time you think that you found the worst thing about them, you find the next worst thing about them, and it's just like this. It's this long descent into horrible things. So at the point where, it just becomes a complete unreality when you read about cults and you go through everything that people, victims and survivors have been through, and trying to find something that you hope people will be able to read and resonate with when it just gets progressively so unreal was a bit of a challenge. And I think I made it work. don't know. I'd like to think that I made it work.
I'd say so. Yeah, it was. I found myself thinking like, they're not bad. It's not that bad. Like as far as that goes, like I think that really was accomplished. Like it was obviously very well researched, like how that all works, for sure. Was there anything, Laurie, on the research process for this book that stands out?
Yeah, I've actually called this out in a couple of other places, but it's so great. I will call out everywhere. There is a documentary on Hulu called Minding the Gap that was directed by a guy named Bing Liu. And it's about 3 boys between like teenagers and in their 20s who are reflecting on the domestic abuse in their lives, mostly parental domestic abuse. And they're also all skateboarders, and it's just this beautiful, intimate portrait of them and their very different, complicated relationships and kind of their healing process from the abuse they suffered. And you know, they all have very different reactions, and it really has affected them all differently. And it's so beautiful. And I watch it pretty often, and it makes me cry every time I watch it. So I just highly, highly recommend it. It's only like an hour and 15 minutes, and I just thought it was so beautiful. And it, you know, contributed a lot to how I thought about all the different responses. You know, it's like with anything you're writing, you know, a response to domestic abuse is not a monolith, and I think it's a beautiful portrait of that and the way it affects people.
Beautiful, and what a good recommendation for us to check out. Okay, so I think we hit. Oh well, actually, I will ask 2 more questions that should be fairly quick, and then we can move on to the reader questions. Number 1, how much of these books, if any, were written during lockdown?
Oh God, I just finished mine like when it started. I think I handed the book in March or something, or March 2020, something like that, because it was out less than a year after I finished it. So not much. It would have been interesting if it had to have been a lockdown book. I don't know that I would have been very successful at finishing it.
My jaw is falling because there is an element of, so that one of the characters within Courtney's book has some kind of prophetic.
Yeah, the mask thing. There's a mention about because it takes place in the cult leader predicts the 2016 election, and he mentioned something about masks, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, I was certain that this was coming out, that you were writing this at least in May of last year.
No, it was very creepy. I was like, oh, I'm powerful. I see things.
Yeah, so if nothing else, read this book for clues about the future, if nothing else. Oh my God, okay. I have to absorb that for a second. Laurie, how much of it, were you still working on this in March of last year?
I think probably it would have just been like copy edits and stuff like that was done. But I do think it's fascinating that we both have such like dark books coming out in, you know, this time.
The darkest timeline.
Yeah, the darkest timeline. Yeah, some people aren't like, well, let me pick up this harrowing novel right now. So I think that's been a little bit of an
when everyone was like, I need an escape, and I was like, no, you don't. You want to feel worse, please.
Lean into it. Lean in.
Well, and I've talked to a lot of people about how I kind of I had this idea I envisioned for the end of the book, and it was kind of dark and about like a cycle of abuse. And when I actually wrote it and we got to that, it was just like, no, it just didn't feel right. So I ended up changing it. It's more of like a moment of catharsis now, I think. And someone said, you know, I really needed that. So I think it was the right decision for a book coming out during this time.
I think that's perfect. Okay, and then are you working on anything now, currently? Or are you just in like pure tour mode? No pressure.
We're fighting with our books, aren't we? Whatever.
Yeah, we are. We talk about it, fairly often. But yeah, I finished a whole draft last year. God. And then I looked at the rest of it and I was like, this isn't going to work. So I you know, you kill yourself to like write it, then you're like, oh, I don't know, this isn't what I wanted it to be. So yeah, I'm working on fixing it, but that's a much longer process. I'm back at like 10,000 words. Yeah.
God. It's constantly the struggle.
Truly.
We love this job, though. We must.
Speak for yourself.
Well, you both make it look very well. You make it easy to look to do very well because all of your books are fantastic. Okay, so I'm gonna turn to the questions that we have from the audience. So I'm looking at my phone, pulling them up. So just apologies. Okay, so first question from Kate B, which y'all have touched on this just now, just a little bit. But for both, what does your writing process look like in general? Write a terrible first draft and fix it, work until the first chapter is perfect, then keep going, or ... question mark. Laura, you just gave us a hint into what the beginning of your process is. So do you want to finish that process statement, and then Courtney, you take it?
First, I want to say hi to Kate B. Hi. Yeah, so I think my process is different for every book. I don't know about you, Courtney, but I've done them all in very different fashions. For one, I always say I don't know how I write books. I black it all out, and then I'm like, great, a book is done. I don't know when that happened or how, but cool. But yeah, I mean, like with this one, I think I wrote different parts of the book at different times. I usually write right through, or I have in the past. So I don't outline, but I do kind of have to know where I'm going. I've tried to outline, and it just doesn't, the plots aren't as exciting when I outline. It doesn't work for me when I'm actually writing it out. But I need to know broad strokes where I'm headed, or I can't get there. So I think that's a lot of times I'll end up writing a draft and trashing most of it. And I think that's part of the reason is I kind of have to write my way through it to figure out what the broad strokes are, and then I can untangle it in my mind and then work through it scene by scene after that. So I'm hoping that I'm accurate, and that's actually my process, but we will find out in real time. I'll let you know in a year or two from now. Just
You'll have blacked it out. I feel like that's like every author just can't remember what they did the last time they did it, or we'd never do it again because it's like inevitably painful and hard. I mean, it's great. It's a wonderful profession. You love every part. It's fun. I like to revise as I go, which is not always the best for me in terms of getting ahead. And right now, the book I'm working on now, just like I've basically storyboarded it, and that's not doing me any favors either. So basically, I'm just white knuckling it, just like I do every book. It'll work out. It'll be fine.
Is your storyboarding like? Oh, go ahead, Laurie. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that makes me feel better because normally I'm so jealous when I'm talking to Courtney because I'm like, oh, she's got it all figured out. So it's going really well.
Then I come in and I'm like, Laurie, help me with this. And then you should know by now that I don't, because I will come to her with the most ridiculous questions. Like today, I was just trying to figure out how to get a character on a road. And I was like, this shouldn't be this hard. But I was making it that hard. Laurie saved me.
I think what that means is that y'all need to write a book together. Is what I think that actually.
Let's do it. It'll be the most grim and dismal, saddest thing.
Oh shoot! What was the question? I just had a question. Oh, whatever. It's gone. Okay. It'll come back to me eventually. Sorry, I was Julia. I clandestinely was texting Julia to hand me my glasses because my eyes were starting to tire from the screen because I'm old. Back to our questions. Okay. Oh no, I remember my question. When you storyboard, Courtney, are you like a Faulkner? Do you write literally upon the wall and like
no
string, no. Or are you like do you have like dedicated spaces and stuff?
It's just a Word document, because if I had to do anything that was like tactile, I'd be like constantly erasing things and just that's a nightmare. I can't even contemplate, really. It's bad enough in the Word document that I can delete and revise at any time. If we took it off the screen, it would be awful. Just awful.
It's anxiety inducing to me as well.
It is. Yeah.
Not a fan of that method. But I understand the like wanting to like actually visualize it, but like you have to have it to a point.
Yeah.
Okay, so from Rachel Stroll, which is related to the last question. At what point did you know how the story would end? Did you know from the very beginning, or was it something you discovered along the way? Which I think different writers have different ways they write, which is probably this could be a good leading question to see which one you are.
You first, Laurie.
Yeah, you go, Laurie.
Hi to Rachel as well.
Hi, Rachel.
Yeah, I usually do know what the end is going to be. I know I kind of get this image in my head. So I know, like, with A Better Bad Idea, I always knew what the last scene was going to be. And I kind of knew what the climax was. So what actually changed was what happened at the climax. And that was the decision I made after I had written a draft and kind of talked to my agent about it. So, but yeah, for the most part, I usually know what the end is going to be. I get usually about halfway through books, I feel like I get this image in my mind of how it ends. And all my books kind of have these like nice little caps on top, I feel like, as endings. So that was probably why sometimes, they're a little too neat, but I'm working on that. But yeah, no, I usually, I just have this idea of what makes sense and how it will be nice at the end. What about you?
I feel
Courtney?
like my baseline is it just has to end terribly. Oh wait, but most people tell me my books don't have endings. That's actually, I don't end them. I get a lot of grief for that because they usually just stop. So I have yet to end a book the first time I do ends. It has the most conventional ending, I think, of all my books. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I kind of knew how it would end from the start because, like, there's only so many places a cult novel can go. But yeah, it's as long as everyone's upset.
For all of your books, I would read more. So I think that's like a good. It can be.
I like that.
If you can end a book, like not end a book, as long as somebody wants to keep going.
Like, I don't know why people do that though, because I'm like, it can only get worse for these characters. Like, you realize that if I keep going, they're gonna die. Like, that's what you're wanting.
And Courtney, that made me think of This Is Not a Test, because that was the one where I was like, is this the last page?
So many people have that reaction.
I love that book.
Good. I think we could pick up. I mean, so Sadie is a big stat, like a big like store favorite here. Like a bunch of our readers have picked that up. I could see picking up with the podcasters, like picking up another case.
Yeah, when we were like submitting it for film and stuff, people wanted to make it into like a thing with the overarching thing was the podcast, and I was like, not a book.
Yeah.
It's not. Yeah, it was like, we can just get rid of Sadie in season 1, and then it can be the West show. And I was like, that's not the name.
No, that's not acceptable. I agree with you. That's not acceptable. I could see another book that like uses that as the jumping off point, but like he's not the point of the book. No. Like, what are they on?
Patriarchy. God. That's what they're on. The worst drug.
I do want to show you a pin we have here at the store now. Hopefully this won't show up in backwards for everybody.
Oh my God, that's good. Patriarchy is a plague. I love it.
Yeah, this is by a brand called Word for Word. So everybody. Anyways, sorry. It was a very unscheduled advertisement. Okay, to our next questions. Here we go. What was the hardest scene to write? Courtney, I'll go with you first.
Oh God, I don't know. I think they're all hard after. Like, honestly, I don't know. And then I'm thinking, if I do know, I can't say it, because there was one scene toward the end where I can't say it. It just upset me.
Don't say it. I'll just leave it at that. Okay, so just know that most scenes past the introduction that I already gave you a preview to were hard.
Yes, that's valid. Yes, that would be my answer. Thank you.
Laurie, you.
I think my hardest scene to write was the scene where Reed dies in the book.
That was hard to read. So good. I'm glad it hurt you.
Kind of had to. Yeah, I mean, I just kept going back to it. Just, actually the comment I kept getting is that I think it was because it was painful, because it kept being like, this needs to feel more visceral. It's from her perspective and all this stuff. And it was just like too horrifying to think about. So
it's so sad. I got so upset when I got to that part, because like you said, it's coming, and it's like, but what if it wasn't somehow? Like, it's like that one moment you wish you weren't reading a contemporary, like maybe some kind of magical something is going to come out of page whatever and not make me hurt so bad. But no, it's a Laurie Devore book. Here to hurt you.
I know that I was very happy to see that Kit Frick had blurbed your book, Laurie, because so much of like the lead up to like I was just reminded a lot of I Killed Zoe Spanos in the way that we're told that that Reed dies, and there was I love I Killed Zoe Spanos. I love it.
Yeah.
But there was a lot in her death or in Zoe's death that there was more, and like so as hard as it is to sit with Reed's death, it was fulfilling.
Yeah, it was fulfilling. It was right. That's it. It's so painful when something so painful is so right. I respect it.
And I also just want to add, I love I Killed Zoe Spanos too. I listened to it on audiobook a couple of weekends before like I had finished or before I was like finishing up the final, marketing stuff for my book. And I was like, guys, we have to ask Kit Frick if she'll blurb this book. I just read I Killed Zoe Spanos and it's so great and she'd be perfect. And she was such a champ and she came through and did it in like a week. And I was so thrilled to have her blurb on there and it was so nice. And it's a fantastic book if you guys are looking for like a great audiobook read too. They did a great job with the cast on that. So
all of the audios on like all of y'all have good audio casts overall. Okay, I don't want to. Okay, there was a similar question. What was the hardest? Oh, this is interesting because I know both of you have been asked who is your favorite character to write and who do you see yourself most as. I don't know who was the hardest to write though.
You first, Laurie.
It was Ashton for me because you see it from the two girls' perspectives. So it was, and like I said, because he's such a cipher, it's kind of hard to nail down who he actually is. So I found that really challenging and seeing it from their eyes because they both kind of idealize him in a way and make him into what they want him to be, but that is not who he is. So that was something that I worked on a lot when I was developing the book.
He's really like, you can like, the one thing about him, you could like really, his agony, like that really came through. I was like, my God, this guy, he's so sad.
He's such a drama queen though. Like he's such a drama queen.
Sad. He's so sad. You could like feel it. He's like, it was the kind of drama that is like, you can tell it's not fulfilling him at all. And he's just completely depressed. And I was just like, this guy, it hurt.
I would bet he's a Virgo empath would be my guess.
I bet that would work.
So many. He's wants things to be a certain way, and he feels many things, and he's able to articulate them in the way that like it's very hard to receive that as the person. That was the thing. Like, well, you know your feelings a lot, and like I'm not there yet, man. I'm not there yet.
Get it away.
Well, yeah. I thought what was interesting about him is he has this like real belief in this kind of trope that, people can save each other, that like romance can save you. And it's like, slow your roll, man. Like you gotta validate you gotta find your internal validation before you can find that external validation. So I think that's like who he was to me is, he's kind of like my pushback against that idea, I guess. So
it was good. It worked. Yeah. The poor guy.
I think so.
I felt for him.
Courtney, who was yours?
Yeah, you're not getting out of that.
It was probably Lev Warren, the cult leader, because I think when I was like developing him, I was like, there's got to be a moment where he shows everyone who he truly is. But then I realized he's not hiding anything. He is who he says he is. He believes who he says he is. He believes that he's divine. There's no mask to slip off. He like wholly encompasses that. And every time that I tried to take off the human mask and he's got a bunch of tentacles and he's an evil monster, like it never worked. It was like he had to believe it right to the end. So once I figured that out about him, he got a lot easier to write, but it was a lot of bad drafting before that moment. But I guess that's fair.
That makes sense. I mean, those are very complicated characters to get into. He
kind of has that brooding thing too that people really want in fiction, right? He's got the tragic backstory and he needs you to be.
And he was chosen by God, like who could
exactly.
refuse?
Exactly.
I'm sad and God wants you to make me happy. Like, try to walk away
That's
from that.
not a golden boy, then I don't know what is. Somebody ask Courtney about golden boys, why don't they?
I never read them.
No, just literal deities.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a fun, interesting question that is totally different than anything else. From user Nikolai Music. That wasn't sarcasm at all. This is very serious. Can you both talk about the cover process for your latest books? Do you get through many cover comps and ideas? I was looking back, Courtney, at yours. I was wondering, can you hand me one of the? I think they're on top of the printer, Julia. Can you hand me? Thank you. Sorry. I had some of the keychains staged to show people. But I knew what the cover looked like in my head, and I thought when I looked back that the picture of the cabin at first was from Lo's scar. Like I thought it was like coming out from her scar. So this is what the book looks like. So I am curious, like for both of you, like what was the cover process like?
Mine was fairly straightforward. I found an illustrator, Marie Bergeon, who I really liked, and then my cover designer liked her too. And we talked about how we wanted like the cult and the mind games and the psychological components reflected in that. So we're like a silhouette, and he's literally in her head. And if you see the water curves up, it's her scar, and there's just a lot going on in that cover that I really love. But it was once we had the concept, it just came together really well.
I see it now. I see the
scar. That's like my favorite part. I was like, can you make the water just edge up a little like her scar? And I'm really pleased with how it turned out. And Laurie has some cool.
That's so good. Sorry.
Isn't it right? Like I was like, yes, it's all coming together. Laurie has you have a bunch of the cover on your Instagram. She has like the different covers.
Yeah. I was gonna say that. Yeah, I actually on my Instagram a couple of weeks ago, I posted some of the different cover comps. So I actually got sent 4 pretty different cover comps when we started concepting this one. And one conversation we had is that because, this book was a little bit more of a thriller and even a little darker than some of my other stuff, that we wanted the cover to reflect that, because there's always been kind of a playfulness in my covers. And we thought this one kind of needed to embrace the darkness a little bit more. So I had 4 of the cover comps, and we had 2 that we really liked, and we kind of talked back and forth. And one of them is really cool. So if you go see on my Instagram, there's this really cool kind of green cover that we also looked at. But this ended up being the most popular one, is the one you see behind you. And we played around with kind of some of the details on it and finalizing it. But other than that, I mean, it's very, very similar to the comp they sent me, and I'm really happy with it. I think the title treatment is one of the coolest things about it. Is
I was going to say, the A. I love the A.
Oh yeah, that was something we tweaked a little bit. Yeah, the A was on
maybe
fire.
we can have dual covered.
Yes, and look at fine. Wait, okay, here it is.
The flames are super cool.
I had no idea.
Oil flames.
So yeah, I got input on the cover, but the like actual hardcover with the flames, that was a total surprise to me when I got the books in the mail the other day. So that was really cool.
Oh my gosh, that is such a good touch.
It is.
Ugh, impressive. But both Julia and I, my co-owner, and right now my stagehand at the moment, we both work in publishing and have worked like in different like realms of book packaging, and so like, oh my god, spine foil and hardcover is so impressive.
It is. It's so pretty.
Such a big deal. It's so good. That's amazing. It's so beautiful.
I love the sparkle.
I
love when like books feel like I mean, I know books are things, but I just love when you get the whole product vibe from them, like it's just everything's got bells and whistles. So when I flipped open the cover and saw like the little flames, I was like, yes.
Right.
And Courtney's has the quote on it, right? That's on the Yeah, that's really cool too. Always take the jackets off your books and look at what they look like underneath.
Yeah.
You guys. I am okay. This is amazing. That's crazy. I had no idea. I thought you were talking about the flyleaf.
Nope, but we got the little secret cult messaging. We're not
The flyleaf is amazing. Oh my god. You guys are such pros. I had no idea. I mean, not that I had no idea you were such pros. I had no idea about the secrets you had to tell me about the physical products of your books. Okay. We have two more questions from our readers. Okay, so from Holly, why did you choose specific locations, the specific locations for your books? So for the Project New York and for A Better Bad Idea, we've got South Carolina. I think the small town is South Carolina, right? And then they go into Tennessee. Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, all my books are set in South Carolina. You know, this is where I come from, and I think it's not super common, especially in modern settings, to see the South represented. Not that there's not a lot of authors who are Southern authors who are writing great stuff. There definitely is, but I do think, you know, sometimes in pop culture, the South has become a little bit of a cliche. So I think it's a really modern place, and it's changing a lot, and I like exploring that in my work. This book is specifically set in upstate South Carolina, so it's the closest book to where I grew up, and that was a big part of the book for me, is getting to do something that was kind of close to home. So I like that.
Did you have any input on the audiobook accents?
I had a lot of input. I wrote a little treatise. I wrote a little treatise to the poor audiobook producer, and I kind of gave him Reese Witherspoon rankings, and I was like, so like normal Reese Witherspoon accent is kind of where I want them to be. They can't be hamming it up. It needs to be pretty subtle. But, you know, for some of the characters, they could go as far as Reese Witherspoon in Sweet Home Alabama.
Okay. Yeah. That's a really good approximation.
So that was about how crazy I got with it. But yeah.
Those are great guideposts. Great guideposts. Courtney?
Mine is way less interesting. I don't think I had a spot. It was like a stateless state, and then my editor was like, "This could be New York. Let's make this New York." Or wait, I think I decided that Paul, the journalist, he was in New York, and then he was out of New York, and I wanted everyone to be close to New York, and then suddenly I had a location that I had to research, and that became my editor's problem because she lives in New York, and she's like, "Okay, I'm gonna figure this out for you," and she kept trying to teach me geography, and it anyway. If it worked out, it's all because of her. I'm in Canada, so.
That's deeply funny, and also good, just good to hear. The very last question from Kathy Coe. If someone were to make a drink inspired by either of your novels, what would be included?
The blood of my enemies. No, sorry.
So yours would be more like a spell.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Is what I'm getting.
Let's go with that.
Holy water.
Oh my god. We should both like provide juice cleanses or something after our books, you know, just something to like work all the toxins out of your system.
Yeah. I mean, if you're an adult and you would like to have an adult beverage with my drink, it would probably just be like a whiskey neat, honestly. That's kind of the vibe.
Yeah. I was gonna say a whiskey with a twist of orange would probably be yours.
Nice.
What would the project be?
Oh, it would be
I want to
like,
say gin. I think it would be gin, like because all the trees, you have all the pine.
Yeah, gin is clear, right?
Yes.
I don't know. Yeah, it feels like it would have to be something that looked pristine at the very least.
Yes.
That would mess you up.
Yeah.
I like that.
Unassuming from the outside.
Yes. Perfect.
Yes. Kind of gin neat with like some kind of your fruit or vegetable garnish of choice.
Yes.
Because the project welcomes all.
Yes. I love that. I'm stealing that if that ever comes up again. Thank you.
Please do. Well, thank our reader, who was again Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kathy.
And thank you, everybody. I think that's the end of our time, unless you have last questions that you want to pop in. But Thank you both so much for joining us. This was such a wonderful, wonderful conversation.
It was.
And yeah, just and do you have anything last to say? Otherwise, we'll just say night.
I want to say congrats to Laurie on her book launch, and to thank you for hosting it, and buy our books from Itinerant Literate Books.
Oh my gosh, how did I forget? Sorry, I had it. Julia, can you hand me one of the keychains? Oh, they're right there.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so we do have. Sorry for this. As you saw when I got very excited about the foils, we do have signed copies of both books available. They are limited, but we do have signed copies of both books available. And we did make with Laurie, she consulted on this. I was too scared to put the Four Seasons on this. I thought I'd get in trouble. So we have Sparky's Motel, little key fobs.
They're so cool.
As pre-orders for Laurie's book in pink and red. And those are available. The links are actually in the description of the YouTube live, and they're also available on our website, and we'll send an email follow-up. But those are available. So congratulations to Laurie. It's an amazing book.
Thank you guys so much all for coming, because I know we're all Zoomed out, so I really appreciate it. I know it's another little thing, so I really appreciate it. And thank you, Kristen, for moderating it, and Courtney for joining to help launch my book. I really appreciate it.
I love that book, of course.
This was a dream. Both of y'all are rock stars.
Awesome. Thank you. So are you.
Yeah, so fun.
I'm gonna die.
Don't do that. There's so much to live for.
True.